Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. Okay, so Happy New Year! I know it's been a while. It's also really early in the morning, so I'm having coffee. Okay, so where to start? All right, first of all, an explanation. If you haven't heard from me since the last time I filmed a video, then you probably have no idea that the reason they just cut off very suddenly is because my grandmother passed away and I was called back to where I'm from in the Bay Area, California, very quickly. Also, right now I'm sitting on the floor next to my dog's toys. Yeah, he has a basket of toys. He knows to get them out. He does not know to put them away. I'm hoping that's something that we will work on now that he's an adult. And, well, he's been an adult for a while. Now that he's like 5 going on 6 years old, like that'll be our next trick, is putting the toys back in the basket. So I thought I got through this whole week plus. My family is Filipino, so there was a novena for my grandma, and I was there for basically that whole time. For those of you who don't know, Catholicism, and specifically this kind of Catholicism, I think this is common in Latin American countries, is it's 9 nights of prayer, basically, and then the 40th night there will be more. That will be later in January. I'm just rambling at this point. But just it's really interesting. I think that the novena is actually a great thing because having to do the organization of prayer actually really helped people get through the process of mourning. And so it didn't really hit me until I think we were doing the mass. I was singing with my grandpa. That was the last thing my grandma asked me to do, was sing with my grandpa, so I did it. Obviously, I would have done it anyway, but it was nice that at least, I think for me that was my closure, is she asked me not very long ago actually if I would sing with my grandpa, and you know, sad as it is, it was nice to be able to do that for her. So during the mass, I suddenly thought about the fact that my grandma would never hold my baby if I had one, and then that thought kind of stuck like a thorn in my head. And I just kept thinking about the fact that, like, oh my God, life is so short. My grandma had my mom. My grandma was married when she was 16. Someday I will tell my grandma's story because she's fascinating, but that's not the point. So my grandma is very fascinating. She got married for the first time when she was 16. She had my mom when she was 18. And I was like, that 18-year difference is so small. So I just kept thinking how short life is and how upset I would be if my mom didn't get to hold my child. And as I was thinking this, it just kept getting like stuck in my head that I was like, oh my God, I need to have a baby. I need to have a baby right now. And then I thought, there's no way Mr. Blake is going to go along with this. So I, in my head, was compiling a PowerPoint presentation to tell him, like, yes, I know that now is not the right time. I know we don't really have a stable income and I'm trying to be a writer and this is not a good time, but maybe we could figure it out. You know, it would be 9 months before it got here anyway, and there never is a good time. And I had this whole concept, and then I got home and I told him, he couldn't be there because he just started his teaching job. It's a whole thing. But anyway, I got home and I was like, I think we should have a baby. And he goes, I think no. And I was like, oh, you're right. But yeah, I don't know why I'm telling you this story other than because this is what I do, is to be honest with you, and these were the thoughts that were occurring to me, and I was kind of all over the place for the last few weeks. It was a very weird holiday. Apparently the funeral gave me like terrible baby fever for like a week, but I think I'm good now. Here's what I've read recently. I have finished the first 2 books of the Neapolitan novels, which if you've never heard of them, oh my God. Okay, so I initially picked them up because I'm writing a literary fiction manuscript right now and I needed more literary fiction. Go figure. And these wouldn't work for comps because they're pretty old, but I picked them up just to sort of see what it was about. HBO's doing, I think HBO adapted the first book, so I was like, sure. I am in love with these books, you guys. I haven't loved a world like this since, I don't know, I want to say Harry Potter. Like, I am fully immersed. If you enjoy, say, modern romance, for example, of my stories, or you enjoy the things that are not so plot-driven, then you will definitely love these. I mean, not that the plot isn't interesting, but it's definitely more of like falling in love with the characters and the setting and the time and all of that. And the words, the prose is just fantastic. I mean, I wish I could read it in Italian, but the English translation is also beautiful. So yeah, that's yes. I also read Enigma Variations by Audrey Osman. I will say, I think Call Me By Your Name was more beautiful. I think there is something in the beginning of this book that kind of undoes parts of Call Me By Your Name for me. I don't want to talk about them because they're spoilers for both books, basically. But yeah, I've said this, that I have a system where I earmark the tops if I like the writing, and the bottom if there is any sort of romantic stuff. This book is like extremely erotic. Not erotica, definitely erotic. It had the last line for me just blew me away. It changed the whole story. But again, these are literary, so this is, you're there for the beauty of the words, not the action of the plot. But yeah, all of these are just incredible. I don't know if you can see all those marks, but yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing. This is what I'm reading now. The Immortalist by Chloe Benjamin. This copy was lent to me by Aurora. She fell in love with the book. The reason I have interrupted the Neapolitan novels in order to read this book is because she can't get her hands on book 3 until she comes back from vacation, so this is one of my better friend moments. I'm not diving into book 3 yet. I'm waiting. You're welcome, Aurora. Okay, so let's get into your questions. I'm drinking coffee. I said because it's early in the morning. It's so early and I'm so out of practice. Okay, so what are my New Year's resolutions? I'm not a big New Year's resolution kind of person. Mr. Blake is. Mr. Blake needs to have like a concrete New Year's resolution. And in the beginning of our relationship, when I was much more strongly doing things that he did, I did them too. I think one year it was definitely no energy drinks. And I gotta tell you, that was a rough year. I've said before that the reason I have such a high caffeine intake is because my pills made it so that I got migraines a lot, and caffeine is actually medically the thing that solves migraines. It's crazy because it does not help headaches, because most headaches are dehydration and stress, and caffeine doesn't help those things. It does help migraines. So the reason I was sort of addicted to energy drinks to begin with was because my pills necessitated them. So I spent this really tough year not drinking energy drinks, and then the minute the year was over, like literally the minute it was over, I went back to drinking like excessive caffeine. So I think that was the last year I did a New Year's resolution, because I was like, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? And he was like, well, it helped me. And I was like, yeah, but why was I doing yours? I have changed my behaviors a little. I'm not going to call them resolutions, but I definitely am trying to focus on my needs this year, as in identifying the difference between my actual needs and excess. So it's kind of minimalism for me is a theme this year. When I came home from the holidays, I got rid of a lot of my clothes. I just decided I really only wanted, you only technically wear like 20% of your wardrobe. And so I got rid of a lot of the stuff that I haven't worn in a long time or that doesn't really mean anything to me, and kind of identified what sort of stuff I want to have. Like, oh, a black knit sweater. Perfect, done. I already have the perfect one, and I no longer need any more black sweaters. Do you see what I mean? I got rid of a lot of stuff. I have cut a lot of, I got rid of a lot of my makeup also. That's the sort of thing that builds up over time. You get like samples or whatever, and you just have all this stuff. I've simplified my like skincare routine, which also I wanted to talk about a couple of things. So I really like the Fresh brand like rose water toner. I used it for a little bit and I was like, wow, this makes my skin feel so great. But I don't really love the brand Fresh. It just doesn't do much for me, and it's like pretty expensive. But Trader Joe's makes a rose water toner for like $6. This stuff is great. I love it. And, okay, so I know every now and then I do really weird things. You have seen me wear crystals, etc. I'm not necessarily a crystal wearing person. However, I did pick up this stuff. It was on sale at Anthropologie, and I was like, oh, this is cute. It's called Aquarian Soul Blemish Magic. And what is in this? You're totally gonna roll your eyes at me, I swear. I rolled my eyes at myself. I was like, why am I buying this? It's half off, but that's not a reason to buy it. But anyway, it is. So it's a mixture of oils and crystals to reduce redness and blemishes. What it mostly is like witch hazel and tea tree oil, both of which are things I already use or have used in the past. This stuff is actual magic. Mr. Blake is convinced that it's just a placebo effect, and I mean, maybe it is, but it's working. It's got rose quartz in it too, so it's like pretty. Anyway, it's called Aquarian. The brand is Aquarian Soul. This is Blemish Magic, but they have magic for other things. But anyway, so yeah. So my thing is definitely, I'm trying to be more, it's almost like I'm trying to get closer to myself by getting rid of the excess that I have collected that I don't need. I'm just excising the unnecessary. Another thing for me, career-wise, I mean, you're witnessing my career. You know I'm a writer. I would like to be an author, so definitely going to have to work harder at this year. I think I've had the wrong attitude for the last couple of years. I say this from time to time. I love the grind. I love the work. I loathe the hustle. I really hate the marketing. I really dislike querying. I really, really, really hate social media. I mean, this sort of thing is different because this feels like me talking to my friends. I think a lot of you guys have said before that it feels like, we're just hanging out and talking, and that is what it feels like to me. I want to answer your questions. I want to interact with you, but I don't want to trap you into comments. I don't want to trick you into likes. But that's part of the job. And I think if I can't do that part of the job, if I can't do this version of the hustle, then I've got to do some other version. I've got to start going to more conferences. I've got to start, I've got to finish my TV script. I love to tell stories, and I literally never stop. I write constantly, and it doesn't feel like work. But that doesn't mean that I get to not do the stuff that does feel like work to me, which is the social media and the begging agents to read things and meeting people who might know agents and working on a TV script, even though I don't want to work in TV, but I want to be a writer, I want to be a storyteller, and however it is that I do that, I have to figure out a way to do it. So yeah, I mean, that hasn't really changed, that it's still a process of everything I do, is this getting me to the ultimate goal, which is to be able to do this for a living. And we'll see. I think this is going to be an interesting year. It's really, I think, good to invest in yourself at the beginning of the year. I just think that with this year, I really want to bring it back to me. And not in a way that's like I'm just going to coddle myself, because that's not helping. I think that's what I've already been doing for the last couple of years. If I don't want to market myself, I just don't. Actually, last year someone said something to the effect of, I don't promote myself very well, and they were right. And at the time I was a little bit annoyed, because I hate self-promotion. I hate it, but I understand how it's a necessity, and this year I cannot let myself get away with it. Which is why I'm going to remind you right now that Inheritance is coming out on my birthday, January 31st. You'll hear me start talking about that some more. Understand that I have to do it because this is the career I want to make for myself. So I got to do the things that make me uncomfortable, which include talking about my work. Hi, Olivie. Hope you're doing all right through the recent after effects of life. Okay, this was sent to me after someone knew about the funeral, so thank you. I know you have lots of virtual support. Thank you. So do you. From me, I mean. When you have time, I wondered if you could chat about any writing advice or experiences with publishing, especially how you decide what gets self-published versus queried and building a platform. Okay, this is something, so the reason I wanted to talk about this now is because of what I was just talking about, which is if I want to make this my career, I have to really invest in the stuff that I hate. I'm not a good source for this, but here's what I will tell you about why I've chosen to self-publish some things versus query some things. So this year I will be querying literary fiction, contemporary women's fiction. So it's going to be a story about a group of women. There's going to be some fantasy element involved, but it's going to be mostly like this is a story, a multi-generational story about women. There's like sort of the matriarch, the daughter-in-law, and then the granddaughter. And about their lives, and it's not really about romance so much as it is about them and their community and their lives. So that I would characterize that. I hate the idea of women's fiction, but it is technically women's fiction. That's more of a beach read. And then the last one is going to be a YA fantasy, which is going to be tough for me. YA young adult is much shorter. It's designed for people in high school, which I don't. That means I'm going to have to tone down my language and some of my themes probably. But I have kind of gotten to the point where the publishing industry does not want women who write adult fantasy. I don't think. The kind of fantasy that I have been writing, so Lovely Tangled Vices, Masters of Death, Inheritance, it doesn't fit all that well into a marketable genre. Adult fantasy is really built on like high fantasy, like Game of Thrones. George R.R. Martin is like, he's basically the adult fantasy person right now. And I don't think they're really interested in what I am bringing to the table for that. So, since they aren't, but some of you are, that's how I decide what I self-publish. So this year, obviously, I'm self-publishing Inheritance. I will probably be publishing another anthology of stories in the summer. And then I have another series that I'm probably going to self-publish, which I'm calling it right now Birds of Prey. I think maybe I've brought this up before. It's something that I've kind of been working on in fits and starts. I decided to rewrite the first series that I ever queried, the Righteous Heirs of Petty Fortune. I was no longer, I queried it because it's a series and because I would rather at the time have gotten an advance, you know? Like, so if it could have been picked up by a publishing house and then they paid me to write books 2, 3, and 4, that would have been ideal. But since I don't think that's happening, because again, it's adult fantasy and it's definitely, I can't age it down to YA, it's adult. It involves a murder competition. And I know that someone was making the argument recently that because adult fantasy written by women is not accepted really in the publishing industry, that means that young adult fiction has gotten like more mature because older women are reading it. But I don't really want to do that. And I'm not talking about romance themes here because I think that sex belongs in young adult. I really adamantly think that there should be at least some sexually mature scenes in young adult, only because those are the late teenage girls. If they don't get sex from the books that they're reading that really specifically are for their interests, they're going to find it somewhere worse. They're going to find it in porn, which is very rarely healthy. They're going to find it with whatever boy they're with. I guess what I'm trying to say is that women of the young adult age group deserve to be told certain stories. They deserve to hear what it's like to be in a healthy sexual relationship, and not purely, and that should include LGBT, that should include transgender stories, that should include a diverse, they should be able to find protagonists like them in stories that are written for them. I strongly believe in young adult fantasy, in the young adult genre in general, and I am happy to write sexually mature scenes within reason for a young adult audience. Women of that age are looking for the stories about coming of age, right? So I don't want to give them a protagonist that's in their late 20s. That's not something they can relate to. Those protagonists are having completely different issues. Even new adult people who are in their like early 20s, they're dealing with different issues. Their stories do not belong in young adult, in my opinion. They belong in, new adult, in adult. But if publishing is not going to invest in that genre, then I will have to self-publish those stories. So I've really gone off on a whole thing here. What I'm trying to say is I am self-publishing this series because I do not think that a traditional publisher will want to market it or know how to market it. I don't think that they will, because it's romance, but it's sort of a twisted romance. The characters their relationships change, they go back and forth. I guess what I'm saying is if traditional publishing won't give me the platform to tell the sort of story I want to tell, then I'll tell it myself. And I don't know how I'm going to find that audience. Because I'm not good at finding an audience. But you guys found me, so I don't know, maybe the world will connect us somehow. But in terms of making a living writing, I'm going to have to conform to the genres that are, I keep saying marketable, but marketable. So I guess if you don't want to pander, then self-publish and find your audience, and it might be a very narrow niche audience. If you're going to write for traditional publishing, then you have to conform to what already exists. They want new, but they also want new within the scope of something. I mean, there's always the possibility that something could do really well. I mean, no one believed that children were going to read fantasy until Harry Potter. And look what happened. But it's still a roll of the dice. So, yeah. I don't have a lot of advice. These are just my observations. I don't know if I'm right, but I do know that this year I've decided to conscientiously make a decision about writing for what I think an agent and a publisher can market, because I just want to tell stories. I'm not saying I'm going to pander the content. I just will be more conscious about who my audience is. That's a big problem with Masters of Death. I don't know who the audience is. I wrote this story that I love and is really, really weird. And I can see why it'd be hard to sell. And I kind of gave up on the querying process because I didn't think, I just, you look at that and just, what do you do with that? It has vampires, but it's not a vampire novel. It has a ghost, but it's really not paranormal. It has a romance, but it's not really a romance. It has LGBT stuff in it, but it's not an LGBT narrative. Okay, so I will write something that is much more cut and dry, and we'll see how that goes. And check in with me at the end of the year. If I figured it out, I will give you all my secrets. But right now, I don't have any secrets. I only have guesses. Okay, so I have two questions that I don't think I have time to answer. One of them is about keeping the discipline to work out, and the other is about being honest with themselves this year about mental health. I think that's going to be a longer conversation, so I'm going to wait on that one, even though it does fit into this whole New Year's conversation. I'm going to save that for next week, so hopefully we can wait. I guess, actually, no. Okay, no. I'm going to try to answer this as quickly as I can because it really is important, and I don't really want to wait. So the person who needs the discipline to work out, just wait till next week anyway. You're going to have, it's the beginning of the year, so you probably don't need help with discipline yet. Also, the gyms are super crowded right now. It's just going to be a mess. We'll talk about it next week. It's really keeping up the resolution that's tough anyway. Okay, happy 2019. My resolution is to be honest with myself about my mental health. Being honest with yourself is very important. So, how did you know that you were struggling with mental health? I'm terrified and too prideful to admit something's wrong, as I'm viewed as a person who has life together. Hard, same. Mr. Blake and my friends say to me all the time that I'm the sort of person that they always think is fine. They want to check in with me, but they think she's probably fine because she's always fine. And I think I was the sort of person who would just sort of deal. So I know what you mean about being the kind of The idea that I paid attention to my mental health was honestly a miracle. It was not a miracle. I'm going to say the corniest thing I will ever say. I will never say it again. The only reason I ever paid attention to my mental health is because I fell in love. I knew something was wrong with me. I was coping however I needed to cope. The only reason that I sought treatment, or that I started to sort of figure out when things were not working for me, is because there was another person in my life who needed me to be something they could understand. Can you see how uncomfortable I am? I had to know what was happening. A friend of mine who is a lawyer recently, I think she started law school when I had already quit. But she was telling me about how when she was in law school, and this is a very personal story, so I'm going to try to keep as many details out of it as I can. When she was in law school, she developed this fear that she would pass out while driving. I don't know that I've ever seen her faint, but I know that she has. She's very squeamish. She can't hear about blood. She will faint. I won't talk about it in case she's listening. I don't think she is, but still. If this had been my problem and I had been talking about it in therapy, and I had a similar problem actually, my therapist would have called this an obsessive thought. It's something that sticks in your head because your brain doesn't want to deal with something that's much more serious. So it's focusing on something that's fairly trivial, the fear that you might pass out while driving, instead of dealing with your bigger questions. Is the relationship I'm in the relationship I want to be in? Is the career path I'm on is this one I want to spend the rest of my life doing? Is this entire life that I've been waiting my whole life to have harmful to my mental health? This is stuff your brain does not want to deal with, because thinking about that would really destabilize your entire psyche. So now that she's not so stressed, she's no longer worried about passing out in cars. She never did, by the way. Thank God. But she was only now able to tell me about this. And she said it's because she's been kind of questioning whether this is something. She's already left the relationship she was in at the time. And she is now thinking, is this the career that I actually wanted? And when she was telling me this story, I felt terrible. Because if I had known this about her, if I had known that she was going through this, I would have immediately told her I would have told her, like, law school is doing something to you. You should talk to a therapist. Like, this is not a physiological problem. You need help somewhere dealing with your anxiety, or something else is bothering you, but something's going on. And I would have pulled her aside and asked her all the questions, but she didn't feel like she could tell me, and that's totally fair. I don't think I would have told anyone either. Like with Mr. Blake, I would never have said anything about my mental health if he had not observed it from living so closely with me. And when I told her that the only reason I left law school, I was deeply unhappy. You guys have heard me talk about that all the time. But the only reason I knew that is because he pulled me aside and said, you are not happy. You can't live like this. And she asked me this question that was just sort of like earth-shattering to me, and which was, why didn't anyone do that for me? Why didn't anyone notice that I was drowning? If you need someone to stop you, to tell you, to look at what's going on in your life, tell me, are you happy? Are you happy? You don't have to be happy all day, every day, but are you happy with the way your life is going? Do you feel like you are treating yourself well? Are you treating yourself like you matter? Are you listening to yourself? Your body is telling you things all the time. Your thoughts are telling you things all the time. Are you listening? You can't guarantee that you'll be in a relationship like I was, where I was ignoring everything that was wrong with me, and my significant other pulled me aside and said, stop all of this. You're not okay. If you don't have someone like that in your life, I will be that person. You will be that person for yourself, okay? Be the person who's in love with yourself, okay? Be the person who is in love with you. I don't know if I'm making sense, but love yourself enough to stop and ask yourself, am I happy? Am I doing what I want to be doing with my life? Am I with a person who makes me feel good about myself? Am I with a person who makes me feel like I should take care of myself? Do I think about myself often enough? Not about, your little wants or your trivialities, but do you think about how your relationships are doing? How have your friendships been this year? How has your job performance been? Has anything been out of the ordinary? Are you treating yourself kindly? Are you being patient with yourself? Are you getting the signals your body is giving you, like, say, the fear of passing out while driving? I don't know how to narrow those questions down for you. I don't know how to help you see things if you've never had to see them before. But try. Once this video has ended, which will hopefully be soon, think about the things that you are doing for yourself and whether or not they are healthy for you. I guess become okay with the answer, no, I'm not okay. When we are permitted to be very selective about what we share about our lives, we are going to share it in the best possible light. So, of course, you probably seem like you have it together. I don't know if I seem like I have it together. I hope by now you know that I don't. But this is why I do this, is so that you understand that nobody does. I can't technically help you with this. I'm not a mental health professional. I am a person who seeks help for my mental health. And that does come with the swallowing your pride and admitting that there's something wrong, which is a difficult first step. No, I'm sorry. Knowing that something is wrong is the difficult first step. Just be honest. If there's not someone in your life that you feel comfortable being honest with, then at least be honest with yourself. And if you can't do that, then get a therapist or a counselor, or you need to find your space where you can be honest, where you don't have to pretend. Whatever that is. I can't tell you what it is, but spend this year trying to find it. Hopefully it's a person in your life. That can be hard because you don't want to put your mental health in the hands of somebody else. It is irresponsible to rely on someone else to police you. You need to do it yourself. Something like your significant other pointing out that you hadn't eaten all day, that's an important flag. It's important that they caught that, but now it's on you to do something about it, not them. Just like it was on me to get help when Mr. Blake noticed I wasn't happy, it was not on him to make me happy. Your mental health is your responsibility. It is your privilege. It is you living with yourself, and you need to be honest with yourself about what's happening. As honest as you would be with, hopefully, a friend in your life. But yeah, I wish you the best of luck with that, because it is a process. It really is. Understanding your own mental health is for sure an ongoing process. It is something that probably does not end, because we grow and we change and we encounter new things all the time. We will have new problems. The therapy that I need right now is going to be very different, I'm sure, from what I need in the future. The therapy that you get at the beginning of a relationship when you're still dealing with your own insecurities and doubts that you can't share with your significant other, these are all different versions of things that we have to deal with, and it's okay to need help. It's more than okay. Everybody needs it. Everybody does. No one is really mentally healthy. There's a line in Steel Magnolias about how, like, natural beauty is a lie or something. Mental health is a lie. I think some people are better able to deal with things, and that is what makes them mentally healthy. But I am just rambling on at this point. It's a new year, you guys. We're just back to this. I'm just going to arbitrarily cut off here. I guess you can ask me more questions. I have a lot more questions, but we'll have to get to them next time. And we'll talk about exercise next time, too. So if you have any specific questions about that, feel free to let me know, as always. Inheritance is coming out at the end of the month. Maybe I'll read you a little sneak preview. But yeah, okay. This has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week.